This is Tim,
Mulele.
and this is Critiquing Comics. Welcome to Critiquing Comics. This is Tim with Mulele in Tokyo, where it's pretty cold. And I've got a little bit of a headache, but good enough. Okay, so I've got a few, we actually got some listener comments this time, but let's talk about the comic first.
Okay.
Okay, so I got this press release from Dark Horse. And I must have been in the middle of 10 other things, which is usually the case. I didn't really read it, but I saw there was a link to a PDF of the comic. So I downloaded it and looked at the first few pages, and I thought, this is kind of lame. I looked at the recap page where it shows it's volume 2 of volume 2 collected edition of this comic. And there's a recap of Volume 1 showing that the main character was in an accident and got his DNA mixed with that of a cat and an owl, and he got their abilities. It was like, this felt to me like kind of a bad parody of superhero comics, except it was taking itself completely seriously.
Oh.
And not unlike some comics we've critiqued on this show before.
Mm-hmm.
And then later, when I had a chance to really sit down and look at it and prepare to do this episode, I realized that the writer is a well-known novelist, Margaret Atwood.
Uh-huh.
Now, even though I do have a paper that says I have a bachelor's degree in English, I've never really been much of a literature reader. I don't know, that's some kind of a crime, maybe. Certainly other English majors don't quite get it, that I'm not so into reading books, but well, I haven't really been aware of her stuff, but so she wrote this comic. I guess she's interested in letting people know the difficult life that cats and birds have.
Right.
And throughout the comic there are little kind of, particularly about cats, these little facts or kind of, pointing things out about difficulties for cats or how pet owners should take care of cats or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So the comic is called Angel Catbird. And as I said, the main character has gotten the abilities of a cat and an owl. It can fly, or he can fly. He can, he has the urge to scratch things, find a scratching post. I guess that in the first volume, he sprayed urine on something. So I read about 60 pages of this volume.
How many pages total?
I think it was close to 200. It's 110, it says.
Okay.
110 pages in the second volume, which is actually coming out on Valentine's Day. But yeah, I don't know. The reviews of it are pretty good, and they talk about it being funny.
Yeah.
I felt like a lot of the humor was recycled from Catwoman episodes of Batman in the 60s. Like Catatonic and Catastrophe and this and that. Like, we've done all this before. I don't know. There were a few places where I kind of chortled, but I didn't find it hilarious. And I was also a little, like, reading 60 pages, I felt like the story didn't really progress in 60 pages. It was a lot of conversation and cat jokes. But there didn't seem to be a lot of story progress. What did you think of it?
Well, I have to admit, I only stayed in for about 30 pages because...
Well, that's our guarantee.
Yeah, I did the guarantee, but I mean, it doesn't bode well for my feelings of the comic. I mean, I gave actually Yiffing in Hell more of my time, but that's going to be a thing we're going to have to discuss a little bit more about. But
the comic that will not die out of the conversation, Yiffing in Hell.
There's something to it being so prominent in my mind, even a month later. But I'm not familiar with the author because I don't read. But the story itself here, it was competently written.
Yeah.
The art was competent and the colorists did their job. Everything seemed to be correct, except the story was absolutely uninteresting to me. I had no interest, especially walking in the middle of a story. If they had said volume 1, I might be a little bit more on board. But in the middle of volume 2, or rather starting from volume 2 with our story so far, was not impressive. Was not impressed by that idea. And they start out walking in the middle of this forest, which I thought was fine, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages of that. Cut to the bad guy for 3 or 4 pages. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages of that of back to the forest, and then back to the bad guy again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then more forest. And so it's like they're never getting out of the forest. And
after about 60 pages, when they finally get to Castle Catula, where they were walking to.
Yeah, and even the characters are starting to say, "Are we there yet?" I know that's an obligatory kind of American joke, but the story was boring. The characters were boring.
And there are too many of them. Also,
there are too many, and it's really cute for people who are really into this kind of shit. So people who love cats and people who love birds and people who want to see this kind of werewolf versus vampire story set in cats and birds, where they have to come together and fight this
evil rat.
Evil rat, yeah. And for me, the most interesting thing was little notes about cats and birds every couple of pages. So at the bottom of some of the pages, let's see if I can find one.
Page 15, cats need claws.
Yeah, cats need claws. I thought that was actually kind of interesting, and they come up every couple of pages.
Yeah, it explains what declawing is and what other options to declawing rather than taking those away from the cat.
Well, it kind of sets a context for what it means to the character to be declawed, what it means to a cat to be declawed, and then it offers a website where you can check more information. I thought that was kind of interesting, but that was the most interesting thing about the comic. And if the comic's purpose is just to get to that little nugget, the comic is doing its job, but it's not entertaining overall. I found myself kind of looking forward to these little blurbs other than the comic itself. It's just not for me. Everything is well done, but it's all set on an idea that is just not going to make me happy. And it doesn't do anything so original or unique or interesting with what it has with the material. It's going over to actually merit its own existence. Sorry, that's kind of a harsh criticism, but it doesn't do anything except collect a lot of things that you already know, add a couple of things that you maybe don't, cat facts and bird facts, but then does nothing with the whole of it, except give you this run-of-the-mill story. And sorry, just to go off on a little bit of a tangent here, it's a problem that I find with a lot of dark horse stories that I've read in the past, and I don't mean to talk shit about the company in general, because they have produced some genuinely good things that I like quite a bit, like Hellboy, or I don't know, I can't even remember any other first comics that I've read.
Yeah, when they were publishing Star Wars, I mean, I wasn't reading it, but it was well liked, I know.
I saw a couple of cute Star Wars stories. The Star Wars Pulp Fiction comic they did, where they had Yoda and Mace Windu in a cafe doing the Pulp Fiction bit. You've never seen Pulp Fiction?
I watched more than half of it.
Fuck, man.
But I didn't finish it.
You didn't finish?
No.
What the fuck is wrong with you? That's a movie you have to go back and finish. If for nothing else than just the cultural references that people still make to it. But anyway, stuff like that was kind of cute. But, you know, in general, aside from those kind of bits, Dark Horse has this thing where, and I'm sure lots of people are going to correct me and tell me that I'm full of shit, but just what I've seen from my own experience is the Dark Horse has this thing where they like to make things kind of goofy and fun and nostalgic, but shy away from anything that is kind of actually serious or meaningful, as far as stories go. Unless it's already so popular or wildly famous that is the thing that they're trying to capitalize on. But a new property, no, they're going to go goofy. And this is one of those projects where it seems they've gone goofy.
Yeah, the humor, it felt like in the 70s and 80s, when on TV, when they would try to do something that maybe in the minds of the producers was similar to the Batman show of the 60s, or even like a few times where Adam West and Burt Ward came back in those roles, like the Legion of the Superheroes thing or whatever, where the humor is like really, really lame. This sort of reminds me of that.
Well, I mean, I only have my memories of Batman when I was a kid. I'm trying to think of similar shows. It's like some people would say, well, you know, you loved it when you were a kid, and you might not like it as an adult if you had never seen it as a kid. I don't know if that's exactly true. I did love a show called The Tick. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I've seen that a few times. But I know Paul is more into that than I am, but I've seen it a few times.
Yeah. I love that show, and I love Batmanuel, just as a character name, as a joke, and the fact that the actor who played that character also played the mayor in The Dark Knight, I find just really nice. It tickles. But anyway, yeah, I did see that show only as an adult, and I did like that show quite a bit. The humor was kind of similar to Batman, or I could say at least if 66 Batman did not exist, then The Tick would not exist. As a comic, I never really read it, but as a TV show, I loved it. I didn't watch the cartoon, and the new and improved Tick that I think Amazon launched a year or two ago. I saw like a clip or something. It looked awful. I haven't heard of it since, so I'm guessing it was canceled. Don't know, but yeah, I do think that there is a place for that kind of humor. I don't think this comic actually hits it quite as well as Batman 66 or The Tick did. This is kind of flavorless. There's nothing so extreme or so wacky or so anything as to really make me sit up and go, well, goddamn, if they're going to go that far, then I'll see where else they're going to go. There's no surprise here.
Yeah.
The characters aren't well written enough to really make it interesting to just read someone. I mean, like, if they were to do something, some mundane task, but in a way that's unique to their to who they are, and if who they are is so developed as to be more than just the sum of the references that the writers put in, then it would be at least passable, where I could be into the character. But there's none of that, and the references, I don't care. Cats and birds, I'm not really interested. Fuck, man, I wrote a cat book, and I'm not interested in this. So it's just kind of toothless. And so, yeah, it's just not for me. And if someone who's actually into this, like into the idea of these cats that change into people that change into cats, and then same thing with birds and rats. People who are really into that idea, that core concept, might enjoy this. They might like go with it and just enjoy the jokes that go along with it. Me, I'm not into that. I'm not really interested in that, and so there's a little bit of a task there for them to pull me in, but they didn't, because it doesn't really work on any other level. And so at the end of it, it's like 30 pages. All right, I'm done.
Yeah, I think there is an audience for it. It's just not us.
Yeah, it's not for me.
One other thing that I thought of, well, I've seen in a few other cases where someone who was generally a prose novelist tried to write comics. Some years back, what was his name? Charlie Huston, who did some Moon Knight for Marvel for a while. As I recall, one of the problems with the way that he was writing Moon Knight was that there was way too much text. You know, he hadn't adapted to writing a comic.
I see.
Now, this, you know, again, it's a novelist writing comics. I didn't feel like there was too much text, but I wondered if it felt like the dialogue was really carrying the load here. Not that I could see much story happening, but to the extent that I did, it felt like the story was being told in the dialogue, and the pictures were sort of secondary to that. And did you get that sense?
Well, I mean, it would explain why they're walking in a forest for 50 pages.
Right, yeah. In a novel, that wouldn't be quite as big a deal, but here it's just kind of visually the same a lot, where you've got a visual aspect, which you don't in prose.
Well, I think if I'm remembering correctly, Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers book, that's entirely in walking through the forest, and the big giant battle in the middle of the movie is actually only 3 pages in the book. That wasn't the point of that section of the book, really.
But yeah, for a movie, you got to do what's visually interesting.
Yeah. But I mean, regardless of people's feelings of the movie, my attention was held by the book. Walking through the forest was fine. Talking to trees is fine. I actually enjoyed that quite a bit. The movie, yeah, there was a certain amount of kind of waiting for the battle to finish, or not that it was boring or anything, but I was more entertained by the book than I was by the film. Maybe this is something similar to that, where yeah, the writer has this great idea of dialogue in the forest as they're walking to the castle, but in comic book terms, it takes the majority of the book. Actually, not the majority; it's more like half the book. Half they're walking through the forest, and yeah, there are some curious points, but no, not.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I didn't feel like it was bad. It was just kind of underwhelming to me.
Well, that's the thing. I think that everything is competent here, but the idea is just uninteresting.
Yeah.
I mean, someone who sees a really good film but doesn't like the genre is not going to like the film. Generally, I mean, it's not absolute, of course. I keep wanting to like hedge against people who are going to make comments about my generalisms, but you know, yeah, I'm just going to say that if I don't like the genre, it's going to be hard to win me over. And if you're not really good on any other point than the genre, you're in trouble.
As I said, we got some listener feedback. So, well, first of all, let's get this over with. We're going back to Yiffing in Hell here.
All right.
So, back on the comments for episode 102, where we talked about that, Kristen said, "Guys, you should have Googled Yiffing before you read the comic. Your expectations would probably have been much more in line with the content." And then a minute later, she posted another comment. "Then again, maybe don't Google Yiffing ever." Urban Dictionary's definition of Yiffing says, usually refers to cybersex between two or more members of the furry fandom. Originally refers to the sound that foxes make when mating. Members of the furry fandom may use the term to refer to actual sexual contact, usually in a lighthearted manner. So this all goes back to furries. And so, yeah, that does certainly help make the comic make a little bit more sense, or to explain where that sex scene came from. But, you know, Yiffing doesn't entail tearing your partner apart afterwards. I don't think. But anyway, thank you for that. Yeah, that I guess when I saw it, it just didn't occur to me that Yiffing meant anything. It's just like, what's this nonsense word? Okay, whatever. But it's furry language.
Yeah, no, I had exactly the same take on that. I didn't know what Yiffing is, but now that I know, does it change my opinion of what I said or what I feel about the comic? Not really. The sex scene is kind of buried deep in the book, and there's nothing that really leads up to that, and definitely not to the level of graphic detail that is in the book. It doesn't get that explicit in a porno, but the brutal murder and devouring of the partner was really hard to take, and so I don't think the title, even knowing the meaning of Yiffing, really prepares you for that. There's nothing that
I guess that's the hell part.
Sure, but I mean, think about any media that you consume that talks about death. It just doesn't get that graphic. Maybe some horror films do. There are a couple of notable exceptions, but my reaction to those is the same. I don't want to see that level of gore.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the artists seem to take a lot of time, and I don't want to necessarily say enjoyment, but he definitely took it very far in the comic to the point where we're seeing the pieces of the partner going down his throat.
Hmm.
I mean, they're identifiable pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't even read that far. I think after you told me about that, I just kind of skipped past that.
yeah. So I mean, the graphic nature of it isn't anywhere in the front of the book. It doesn't establish itself as being that kind of book anywhere in the story until that scene, which is what, like 100 pages or so in. I don't know, 50 pages.
Something like that, yeah.
I remember, but it was more than half the book of other stuff, and then suddenly this sex scene. So, and followed by a very, very graphic murder. So, yeah, I think the furry community would probably not enjoy it as a sexual thing, unless there's some extra little bit of, like, murdering your partner is fun. So even though I hear the commenter and understand that, there's a little bit of knowledge that we didn't have. Even with that knowledge, now this one is on a different level.
On our Facebook group, there was a lot of discussion about the previous episode of Critiquing Comics and the pros and cons of talking about a comic that we don't like on the show.
Right.
And in one of the comments on that, Paul Spence wrote, "Actually, I enjoyed the recent Yiffing in Hell critique. I had looked at the Kickstarter but was put off by the creator's boast of having made a book that was incomprehensible. To my mind, the purpose of all art is to communicate ideas or emotions to the audience. It seems counterproductive to put a lot of effort into something that will baffle the audience. I think that critiques of books like this serve a purpose. Creators need to define what they want to achieve with the project and what they want to communicate. Some creators do not seem to understand something as fundamental as that." Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. Well put.
I wanted to read one of the other comments on that. I mean, there's way too much here to read for the show, but the last comment as we're recording this from Kristen Tipping. Perhaps it's the same person who wrote the other comment. Kristen, yeah. And yeah, she says, the Critiquing Comics episodes are almost always my favorite ones, specifically because Critiquing Comics is the only place where I can hear micro-level critique of comics from so many different skill levels and points of view. And yes, some of the submissions are completely incompetent or distasteful, but I still find the analysis of why those comics are the way they are interesting. Then again, I can totally see why other people might dislike those episodes for the exact same reasons I like them. It kind of comes down to personal taste after a point.
Well, I mean, that's kind of a thing. It's a mixed bag only because I don't choose the comics that we review, and you don't either. So whatever is sent to us, we're reviewing. I mean, the main point of it is to talk to the artist and say, look, this is how we feel about the work that you've created. It may not be a positive review, but I mean, in the past, I've really said some hard things about some of these comics, and I've tried to pull back from that a lot because basically my intent at this point is to help the creator of the comic understand their work from a different perspective, a perspective that's just not their own. Either things that they didn't expect, or things that they overlooked, or things that they tried to explain that didn't come across to me as someone who doesn't necessarily know them or their work or even their subject. I mean, at a certain point, you do have to kind of talk to someone who doesn't know exactly what you're talking about. Otherwise, you're going to be kind of stuck in a very small circle.
Yeah.
And I don't say any of these things to be mean, but there are some points where it's like, are you kidding with this? This idea is a bad idea, man. And that was the thing that was so tragic about Yiffing, was that the artwork was absolutely stunning.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of effort and detail, man spent years making that book, but it's basically unsellable because it's his idea was to make a book that would baffle us.
Yeah.
It's only part one of a series.
And he succeeded. It baffled us.
Yeah, but he didn't succeed in actually getting any funding for it through Kickstarter. Maybe he will print it on his own dime, but that's kind of, I guess, not his preferred method. Otherwise, there would be no Kickstarter. Otherwise, there'd be no sending it to Deconstructing Comics.
Yeah. Yeah, I hate to imagine what happens if he gets a bunch of those printed and they sit in his garage. And
hey, I've got comics sitting in my closet, so I can't really say, hey, told you so with that, because I didn't try to baffle people with my comics, and
yeah,
I've got some sitting. Yeah, I mean the first and foremost, it's for the artist to take away something. And, sometimes my mood isn't that generous with, oh, nice try, but, hey, if you just fix this one point. Sometimes, no, I'm just like, man, this is brutal. Just fucking stop. And sometimes I say it like that. But the point is that the artist would hear that and either consider or dismiss what I've said, however they want to do. But it's for them first, and it's for everyone else second. So, I mean, if some people don't like the fact that we don't like certain projects, it's okay. It's not always going to be something that we like, but the point of it is to deconstruct these comics.
And to point out what's good and bad about them, how people can get better, and then I hope that other people who listen, besides the artist or the writer, will get some kind of guidance or ideas from what we pointed out about that comic.
Yeah, these are comments on the last episode.
It was, well, let's see, about the Ned and Annie.
Yeah, that's the one that takes place in a bar.
No, the one that was supposed to bring back funny comics.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that was also a bad idea. We took it apart, but those are things that he could fix to make his comic better. It's not that he doesn't have the talent; it's just that he doesn't have context, and he doesn't have experience writing. His setup isn't quite there. But I mean, seriously, to be honest, if he were to follow our advice, he would make a better comic. And so I feel that episode is specifically for the artist, if he cares to take any of our advice to heart.
Yeah.
If he doesn't, then okay. But, he sent it in to have it reviewed.
Yeah, and we reviewed it, so.
Yeah. I mean, and True did not like that. And also today's, I did not like that. But I mean, I have to recognize there are some good parts. There are some good things in all of these comics. The fact that they're creating comics at all is a good thing. And I don't think I'd ever tell anyone to stop making comics, to give up, or to go away. But I will say that it's not for me, or I feel that these things are wrong. And I think that's just fair.
Okay, the comic that took place in the bar was The Glory, 2 episodes ago, and we heard back from the writer, Glenn Moen. I'm not sure how to pronounce that O with a diagonal line through it. But he said, I just wanted to say I really appreciated your thorough and honest review of The Glory in your podcast. Some of it may be nitpicking, as you said. I visited several bars where they don't serve beer on tap, haha. But every bit of criticism and advice is gold to me. Me and Tirso, the artist, are working on a 3-issue miniseries right now, so I was thinking of sending you the first issue when its release date nears. So, yeah, please send it.
Definitely.
I'd like to see it.
Yeah, both the story and the art were excellent. And yeah, I was asking in the episode for more. So please.
Yeah, so yeah, good to hear back from someone whose work we talked about.
Yeah, and actually quite liked. So
Yeah. Well, that was one of the good ones that we've been sent.
yeah.
And so, if people would like us to critique their work, listeners out there, I mean, practically all of our listeners are making comics, I think. So you can send it to mail@deconstructingcomics.com, a PDF or a link, and we'll read at least 30 pages and talk about it here.
I mean, I forget who said it, but didn't they used to say that 70% of the readers of comics are actually wannabe creators?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Is you feel that's still valid?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I mean, of course, I did make a comic in the past. I don't have much time for it now. But yeah, when I've done some surveys of listeners, I mean, the response that I get, most of them indicate that they're working on their own comic. So
I'm still kind of waiting for Space Barf.
Right. For people who don't know, Space Barf is a comic that I worked on a bit in my younger days, like high school, college time, which was supposed to be kind of a parody of Star Wars / Star Trek / whatever other shows in that genre you can think of. And I was thinking about reviving it, and I haven't gotten to it. I'm going to have to quit doing something in order to have time to write. But yeah, well, yeah, maybe one of these days. Anyway, so till next time, this is Tim.
I'm Mulele.
Thanks for listening to Critiquing Comics.